Hello, everyone. My name is Liz Talbert, and I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Safe Kids. In light of our current situation, our 10th annual Save a Life Forum had to be postponed, and we made the decision to continue to provide the community with valuable resources and information virtually. So I would like to welcome you to the second edition of the Save a Life webinar series. This session will focus on navigating your job search during COVID-19 and will be presented by Katie Travia, who will be joining us shortly. With 18 plus years experience in human resources, Katie is the owner of Career University, an HR consulting firm specializing in training workshops, coaching to individuals, and programs for schools and organizations. Katie has volunteered her services to ASK in the past by leading LinkedIn workshops for local students, and we're thrilled to have her with us once again. But before I turn things over to Katie, I would like to share a few housekeeping items with you. The webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you along with the resources that Katie has provided shortly after it concludes. The chat room that you see on the right of your screen will be set to private once the presentation begins, and you may add any questions that you have there, and Katie will answer all of them. And the image that you see below my picture and Katie's, which will be Katie's presentation, can be made larger if you drag the black line that is just below our pictures up to the top of your screen, should you prefer to have the presentation be more prominent on your screen. So without further ado, I now have the pleasure of introducing Katie Travia.
And thank you, Liz, for having me. I'm very excited to be with Alliance for Safe Kids again. I've come and done a bunch of sessions in person doing LinkedIn training up in Yorktown Heights. And just because of the environment that we're in now, obviously we have to do it virtually. I'm actually very comfortable with virtual platforms because of the fact that I've been doing them for about 4 to 5 years. And also now I've been doing them full time because of the coronavirus. So first and foremost, I hope everybody is safe and healthy and doing okay during this time frame, because although the past month and a half have presented a little bit more of a slight return to normal life for us, it has been a big adjustment for a lot of people. And so I empathize with you if you've been going through some challenges where you've either had to come home from school, graduate in a different environment, be working in a different environment with lots of dynamics going on at home, or just a complete change in your everyday life. So I hope everybody is safe and healthy. So what I'm going through with you today is just an overview of the job search process. I could probably talk about this for hours, so to try and condense this into 60 minutes is very challenging for me. So I'm going to do the best that I can to be as concise as possible with each topic. Each topic, again, you know, I could probably have its own session on. So I'm just skimming the surface on it, hoping to give you a little bit of something that you can walk away from that will help you in your job search. So we'll talk about resumes, we'll talk about LinkedIn, we'll talk about, you know, how to prepare and plan for your job search process, and then networking and interviewing. I got some questions beforehand, so I'll try and answer. I'll get through some of those as we get through the training and at the end. And then if any of your questions come through, just feel free to type them in. When I'm going through, if I see that it's something that I might be answering later on, I'll let you know. So I'll give that feedback real time as we go through the session. All right, so what is our goal today? So my goal is to give you a little bit of a foundation to just get started in your job search. So I'm going to give you some type of guidance. The basics on building what I like to call your professional collateral. So that's your resume, your LinkedIn profile. Things that we're not going through tonight that is also important is, you know, any sort of letters that you write, cover letters, thank you notes, anything of that nature. So we can't really go into depth on it tonight, but I do speak a little bit about it during today's session. And, you know, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people, whether they're in the job or looking for a job. And I've been on the recruiting side. So what I try and weave into this is just letting you know, too, a little bit of behind the scenes on what companies see when they're making decisions on the hiring process. So that's a little bit, there's so much content out there right now. There's so many free things that you can take advantage of. So many platforms out there that give advice on the whole job search process. And so take advantage of all that right now. There's so many articles that are posted, blog posts that are posted on LinkedIn about this. So really taking advantage of all the free content out there right now is really beneficial in terms of making sure that you're well prepared and that you don't have to really spend money in order to get to that stage. I'm sending you some actual resume templates that I use for my clients. So that takes some of the hard work out of finding the right template. Just take one of them. They're contemporary and modern and fresh. So you don't have to put much thought into how you're going to build out your resume. You just have to really focus on the actual content. All right, so let's go into resumes to start. So resume is probably one of my favorite things to give feedback on. I love getting a resume and just really asking somebody if I can go through and give some feedback, because every resume is a work in progress. My resume, for instance, I work part-time with an HR consulting company in addition to doing my own consulting, and they were asking me for my resume just to go over some information that they had to give to a client. And I was like, I haven't updated my resume since 2017. Like, I'm so embarrassed to show you this. But it's a work in progress. I think a great thing to do is right now, put a reminder on your calendar every quarter. So 4 times a year, take a look at your resume and update it, because if you're ever in a position where you're going to need to send somebody a resume, you want to make sure that you have the freshest content out there. All right, so how to get started. This could be your most complicated project, or it could be a quick and easy update for you. So everybody's situation is unique. But I think the main thing is to get a good format, which you're going to have right after this session. And then make sure that you have the basics. So that's a header, a good summary, work experience, your education, and then an additional section. Now, if you are still in school or you have 0 to 1 years of experience working, your education should come first, right below your summary. Another thing too is you want to make sure that you're just staying up to date with the times. So I'm going to go through a little bit of guidance for you just to see if to put you in your best foot forward as far as editing your resume. So first and foremost, past tense versus present tense. So anything that you're currently doing, present tense. Anything that you did in the past, past tense. So if you just finished working for a job, everything has to be in the past tense. You always want to start with really strong action verbs. Every bullet should start with a verb. Not responsible for. Try not to start any sentence or any bullet on your resume with responsible for. Pick very strong verbs and make sure that you don't use the same verbs within each section. So for instance, if I managed a team of 5 people, and then I managed a project from inception to completion, and then I managed a function of so-and-so. I've just used the word manage 3 times within the same job responsibilities. So try and use different words within each section. So that's a good check and balance thing, is to look at the past when you've finished your resume. Do an editing for spelling, doing editing for past versus present tense, doing editing on verbs and not using the same verbs all the time, and then making sure that all your bullets end the same way. Are they all ending with a period? Make sure they all end with a period. Are they all ending without a period? Then they should all end without a period. Doesn't matter which one you choose, but you just need to be consistent. And then lastly, no first person, no I's, my's. I was just looking at a resume today, and the person said that they created magic and impact with my partners. And so I immediately said to the person that I was helping, first of all, you have to further define magic. That's too abstract of a word to have on there. And second of all, remove any reference to my. It's got to be, a passive tense resume. LinkedIn, totally different, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but no first person on your resume. Okay, next up is just my top 5 tips for when you're editing your resume or creating your resume. So first, you want to get the right format and the right foundation. So I'm a big fan of the non-traditional conservative fonts, for instance. So I don't ever use Times New Roman, Garamond, or Book Antique anymore. I'm usually using Calibri, Cambria, Arial, or I can't even pronounce it, but it's Helvetica. I can never pronounce it, but those are the main fonts that I'm using. If you are in a conservative industry, you probably want to use a more conservative resume and format. If you are in a more creative, artistic type of industry, marketing, communications, graphic design, anything where you have potentially some type of art background, then you want to use a more contemporary format like a magazine style format for your resume, where it's visually rich, but maybe not as much content. Second of all, you want to remove any sort of outdated fads. So objectives, the term references available upon request at the bottom of your resume, you never need that. Just a big waste of space. If I ever need a reference, I'm going to ask you. It's not like you're going to refuse to give me a reference. People don't generally put their full mailing addresses on their resumes anymore. Generally, it's your name, your cell phone number, no landlines. We don't want to call a landline and have to ask for the correct person, right? So your cell phone number, your email address, your LinkedIn URL. So those are the three core things that you should have on your resume. If you like, you can put your city, state, but it's really not required anymore. And actually, since we are in a very remote environment now, you want to highlight the fact that you can work anywhere. So why put yourself as living, let's say, in the New York area when you could apply for a job in California, but work in New York? It doesn't really matter as far as location anymore. Plus, putting your full address on a resume is just not needed, especially in terms of maintaining privacy. And then Microsoft Office, Internet Explorer, anything that's a system that everybody knows, you don't need to have it on your resume. Save the space for things that are more critical, that set you apart and make you unique. Incorporate digital links onto your resume. So your LinkedIn URL, if you have your own blog that's relevant and professional in nature as far as what you're posting on there, if you have your own website that you have developed over time and it shows your creative side, you know, any type of digital links on there is really great to add. Skills as well. So usually when I'm working with somebody, I have their header, I have their summary, and then right below their summary, I put the core skills that relate to what their skill set, right? But also relate to the jobs that they're applying for. So project management, vendor analysis, advanced Excel knowledge, mentoring and leadership, presenting. These are all skills that you can put in that skills section. And I also like outside interests on a resume. So at the bottom of your resume, it's good to have an additional section. You can put in that additional section any volunteer work that you do, any leadership, any awards that you've had. You can capture any languages that you may know, computer or actual languages, special skills, any sort of software that people might use like Salesforce or Prezi or any type of software that makes you unique. But then also interests. So interest is a way to form common ground with the interviewer or whoever it is that you're networking with and connecting with. And so if you like cycling, if you like hiking, if you like travel, reading, all of these things, you know, I had someone that was very into strategic games. So he was a big poker player and he was just very into analytical games. And he put that on his resume and it actually showed that he had very strong quantitative skills for certain jobs that he was applying for. Okay, so somebody's asking a question. They're asking, if you add a link to a resume, website you created, LinkedIn profile, does the employer look that up? And if it's printed on paper, is that not presentable to have on a resume? So your LinkedIn URL, for instance, I'm going to talk to you about how to customize it. And I'm going to give you a link afterwards that's going to give you the specific directions to customize it. So any links that you have on your resume should be, very simple links to get to. You're going to PDF your resume whenever you send it out. Never send it out in Word format. And make sure that the hyperlink is available. And yes, we do click through hyperlinks, and we do check them out to just see, okay, let me see a little bit more of the story. This person's resume interests me. Let me go to their LinkedIn page and see more to the story. Let me go to their personal website and hear more about them. So we do look at that. And if it's printed, I would say 98% of the time we get resumes digitally, whether it's through an application site or whether it's emailed to us. Generally, a resume that's printed and given to us is about 2% of the time. So you don't have to worry about, if somebody's going to have it on paper and not be able to go and look at whatever the link is on the computer. So if you've had prior experience, don't just copy and paste the job description. You want to include numbers, stats, results, how you made it an impact. Whenever I'm working with somebody, initially on their resume, I always ask them to think through their 3 most notable accomplishments that they've had. And this could be in college, this could be in internships that you've had, and this could be if you've been working for 25 years. What are the 3 most important things that you are proud of in your professional career? And then within each job, how have you made an impact? What is it that you're most proud of about what you accomplished in your job? And those should be the foundation for your bullets within each section of your work experience. So numbers, stats, percentages, all those things are a great way to show how you made an impact. And then you want to fill your resume with keywords for the jobs that you want. So you're going to have a basic framework for your resume. And then if you're applying to a variety of different roles and opportunities, you're going to make some small tweaks to your resume before you're applying to those roles and before you're emailing it out to certain people. So making sure that you include those keywords that are important to the job that you're applying for. You want to make sure that you also have those skills. So you want to be true to yourself and true to the person and the job that you're applying for, but making those small tweaks. All right. Additional guidance. So it's really important to make sure that your resume is clean, easy to read. So that's why you want to have a good format. You want to have it well constructed. You don't want it to be muddled with grammatical errors, because recruiters only look at resumes for 5 to 8 seconds on average. I usually equate it to A Beautiful Mind, if you've ever seen that movie with Russell Crowe, and how he's looking at a very complicated math problem, and things pop up and are illuminated for him when he's looking at the problem. It's the same thing when looking at a resume. There's trigger things that we're looking at, and if the resume is really easy to read, then we're going to really pinpoint the things that we like about that person in a very quick period of time. So that's why it's also good to include shading on your resume, stats, logos, if you have, let's say, company logos that you've worked for, and any type of graphs. Again, that is more for, I think, the right industries. So graphic design, any sort of quantitative roles. So more conservative industries, you probably wouldn't be including logos and graphs on there. You want to make sure that your resume passes the applicant tracking system. So that's why embedding tables, and like if let's say you're trying to shade and you insert, let's say you want to, I'm trying to think of an example. Like in your headers, you want to shade out the work experience header. And so you insert a text box, and then over the text box, you highlight the text box, and then over the text box, you include the actual text. That is actually not going to get picked up in the applicant tracking system. They don't recognize tables or text boxes. So really make sure that you don't embed things incorrectly. That's going to prevent you from passing through the applicant tracking system. And all the resume formats that you're going to receive after this are all actually applicant tracking friendly formats. And you want to make sure it tells your story. So that's why it's good to have a well-rounded view, not just, you know, your actual work experience or your school experience, but what are your interests? What skills do you have? What volunteering have you done? What outside organizations are you a part of? So really make sure that your resume captures you, tells your story, and shows that you're well-rounded. All right. I'm just checking. I'm just going to do a quick check to see if I have any resume questions on here. Okay, so somebody asked a question. Often when applying to jobs, I still have to manually enter my resume after uploading it. Does this mean it still has to be perfectly formatted for ATS? No, it does not. First of all, you always want to make sure you PDF it, and so that's so that your format stays intact. But no, it does not have to be perfect because of the fact that the applicant tracking system is going to like weave through just the general text that you have in there. But I'm going to tell you something else that you should be doing outside of just applying to the job that's more critical than actually any type of formatting that you're doing within the applicant tracking system when you're applying to jobs. Okay, so those are the main ones that I got for resumes. Again, if I didn't answer something that you were looking to get, you wanted to ask, make sure that you chime in and I can answer it too at the end. All right, so for LinkedIn, LinkedIn is basically what I like to call the end all and be all of networking, looking for jobs, selling yourself. People use LinkedIn for everything nowadays, not just for searching for jobs. It's the #1 tool for reaching out to clients, establishing connections, and keeping in touch with people. So you want to make sure that you have a great LinkedIn profile and that you're spending ample time on there every week. I might even want to go as bold as to say every day, but I'm going to just say every week. So in order to do that, if you've ever gone through my LinkedIn training, I did this for a few years with Alliance for Safe Kids. I talk about how you want to build out that AllStar profile. So LinkedIn actually has a badge that they'll give somebody, and they'll tell you if your profile is AllStar status. And that means, do you have enough content in there that makes it so that people can know about you and people can know the full story. So you want to have your picture, you want to have a headline, you want to have a summary, you want to have your own unique URL. You want to fill it obviously with your work experience, your education, volunteer projects. People can upload presentations on there, your skills, and then recommendations. So you really, in order to achieve AllStar status, you need to have all that information filled out in there. Okay, so a couple quick things. That's a lot of information, all those different points on this previous slide, right? So I can't go into depth on all of them just for the sake of time. But I can tell you a couple different things that are important, right? So at least you can almost get to AllStar status with this information. So first of all, I used to tell people years ago, putting a photo on there, you know, it gets you 70% more views than not having a photo. You are missing out if you do not have a photo on LinkedIn. You need to have a photo on LinkedIn. It doesn't have to be a really fancy photo behind, you know, a formal backdrop that you hired a photographer to take. My picture on LinkedIn, if you look me up on LinkedIn, I was literally in my yard. I was about to go to a wedding. I threw a blazer on before we went to the wedding, and my husband took a picture of me with his iPhone. So one of my favorite LinkedIn pictures is a woman that I used to work with. She's a financial advisor in New York City. She was behind a New York City taxi cab one day. Someone took a picture of her, and her picture is basically her with a New York City taxi cab behind her. So it doesn't have to be staged, it doesn't have to be formal, but it just needs to be professional, right? So you need to be in professional attire, no sunglasses, No animals, children, sports pictures, hiking pictures, none of that. Professional, maybe some sort of outdoor backdrop is perfectly fine. The main thing is that you have good lighting and it's not a selfie. So have somebody take the picture for you. The other thing too is that you can upload other potential pictures to photofeeler.com. You have to rate other people's photos too, but you can get feedback on your picture to say if you're approachable, if people feel like they would want to interact with you in the workplace, if they could feel influenced by you, lots of different things that people give feedback on. And so then you can get real-time anonymous feedback to know that if it's a good picture or not. Next up, you want to customize your URL. So there's directions that we're going to send you after this. I'm not going to go in on this on detail, but basically you want to make sure that your URL is something to the point of linkedin.com/in/your name. If you have a name that is very common, like John Smith, you're going to have to be a little creative because there's many John Smiths out there, and there's probably many John Smiths that already have a customized LinkedIn URL. But, you know, it's just coming up with something that's simple, easy. Once you have your URL established, put it on your resume, put it in your email signature, use it wherever you go. I have on my email signature, it says connect with me, and then it has an actual link to my LinkedIn profile. For content, so you don't want it to be a copy paste of your resume. You want it to be probably not as long as your resume. And it could be in first person, it could be in third person. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. Some people, if they want to view themselves as more approachable, more colloquial, they'll use first person. So I am a innovative and creative project manager who loves working with organizations on complicated projects that improve efficiency, such and such, right? So that's a way that I'm creating it in the first person. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I think one recommendation that I usually give people is if you have some mentors, if you have some roles that you're interested in going into, how are those people framing their profiles? And I would follow that. So again, it's some more startup organizations might have more colloquial type profiles. More conservative industries might have more conservative third person profiles. You want to make your headline catchy. You don't want it to just be your title and where you work. That doesn't tell me anything about what you're doing. Vice president at Johnson & Johnson. Well, there's a million vice presidents at Johnson & Johnson, right? So what is it that you actually do? So you could have multiple different things in your headline, and you can separate it with the border or the straight down the line divider. So if you look at my profile, again, it says HR consultant line, training specialist line, and then something else. I can't remember what it is right now. But you want to make sure that what you're putting in the headline tells whoever it is that's looking at your profile what it is that you do. And it is not your title and the company that you work for. And then your actual summary and section, again, not a copy paste of your resume. I also don't recommend putting your resume on LinkedIn as an attachment. And then you want to make sure that you fill it with recommendations, skills, all that kind of good stuff. For recommendations, I would say it's good to have maybe about 3 to 4 recommendations. You could send somebody an email, hey, would love your feedback and a recommendation on LinkedIn, or you can actually send them a request through LinkedIn itself. So when you're editing your profile, there's a section on recommendations, and you can actually send the request through LinkedIn. Now, somebody asked a question about how do you determine what to take off your resume to keep it to one page? So I'm just going to go backtrack to resumes for a second. If you have 0 to 10 years of experience, your resume should be 10 years. If you have more than 10 years experience, you can go on to 2 pages. Never should you ever have more than 2 pages for a resume. I know people that have had more than 10 years of experience that still keep to 1 page. So what is it that you should take off? Work experience that may not be relevant to your professional career. So if you've had summer job opportunities that are no longer relevant, then I would take those off. If you have high school awards or achievements and you need space for your resume, those come off. Projects, school projects, you have more work experience to put on there, those come off. And so, you know, the bulk of your resume over time, over let's say 2 to 5 years of working, should primarily be your summary, your work experience, your education, and your additional section. So a lot of the big information that you have from college that's on your resume would be completely obsolete by the time you're 5 years out and working. Okay, somebody asked a question about, somebody asked, if you have more than 20 years of experience, what do you do? So you can get to a point, I generally, anything before the year 2000, I work with the person on what the best strategy is. Are there companies on there that they work to prior to 2000 that they like the name and they like the brand and they want to keep it on there? Then we list it out. Or is some of that experience from that period of time not as relevant anymore? We don't even need to have it on there. Same with graduation years. If you are concerned about disclosing how long you've been working for, and this is very true in today's world, many people are very nervous about ageism, then you don't have to include that information. You don't have to include all of your work experience, just what's most recent and relevant. Okay, so jumping back to LinkedIn. So, you know, work to get that all-star status, and then you want to work on actually how you're using it. So grow your network. You want to have that LinkedIn to be your online Rolodex. Anytime you network with somebody, you talk to somebody, you meet with someone, send them a LinkedIn request, keep them on your network, because you never know when you're going to need to reach out to them for something. Go through your email. You can actually have LinkedIn go through your email and do a mass upload so you can get a lot of contacts at one time. People from high school, people from sports, college, prior work experience, community activities, anyone of that nature should be people that you should be thinking of to add to your LinkedIn network, because you never know when you're going to need to ask that person for an introduction. And so the greater network you have, the greater opportunity you have to see if somebody knows a mutual connection that could help you in your job search. But also too, it's going to help you as far as making you appear in more of people's news feeds based on how you use LinkedIn. The more you use LinkedIn, the more you have a robust profile, and the more you engaged on LinkedIn, the more you're going to show up in people's profiles in their news feeds, and you're going to be top of mind for people because they're constantly seeing you in their news feed. So that's why, in addition to growing your network, you want to get on there and you want to like, you want to comment, you want to share, you want to engage with people. So LinkedIn will show you work anniversaries. Congratulations, 5 years. What an amazing achievement. You know, it even shows birthdays on there. Somebody just got a promotion. Congratulations. You must be so proud, or what an amazing accomplishment. Like, comment and then share things that are relevant. So I share things all the time. I'm not actually writing it, but it's relevant to what I do. And then the more people see things that I'm sharing, the more they're going to think of me when they need something HR related. So right now, we are heavily asked. I do a ton of diversity and sensitivity and diversity and inclusion training. We've had a lot going on since George Floyd's death, and I've been sharing a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, just promoting diversity awareness in the workplace, how to be an inclusive environment, how to help companies think about their diversity strategies. And I'm getting so many comments from people on LinkedIn because of the stuff that I'm sharing. It's nothing that I've created. I could go in and I can create some blog posts and share that, and I've done that too. So what is it that you can share? What industry are you in? I worked with somebody and she was in the travel industry and she was let go, and she wanted to know she's like, well, what should I share? And I'm like, well, share things that relate to the travel industry. What are the things people should be thinking about when booking their travel right now during coronavirus? Should people be traveling? What are some articles that people are posting about the next best time to travel and what you should be thinking about the next time you're traveling? Any way that you can share content where people can see you as a subject matter expert in your area, the more they're going to think of you when they have a job opportunity, or the more they're going to want to, let's say, introduce you to somebody else that might help you in your job search. You should also join groups. I got to get through some of this fast. I'm telling you, I could talk about LinkedIn for a long time. Follow companies that interest you so that you can see what's going on with those companies. What's happening in the news with them? Are they hiring? What are the prominent areas that they're focusing on? And then you want to create alerts on there. So there's a job section. You can create, I think, up to 3 alerts a day on the just regular LinkedIn account. And so you can create alerts that just come to your email address that are sharing with you like any jobs that are open within whatever your search criteria is. That's another thing I didn't mention before too. A good strategy is to have your own separate email address for the job search process. That way it's professional. You don't have to worry about explaining to somebody why you're still using an AOL account if you have that. So create a professional email account, put it on your resume, create all your job alerts on there, and then you're staying completely organized in your job search process, but nothing else is getting muddled in your email of whatever else is going on in your life. Somebody's asking, can you share items for which you don't own copyright? I mean, if you're sharing articles that other people have posted, absolutely. I read this article, it had the exact same recommendations that we give people for travel recommendations right now, and you share it, right? So there's so many different things that you can share that's just on the internet where you're including hyperlinks that you're sharing. I'm going to skip over this one just for the sake of time. It talks about LinkedIn Basic versus Premium. My recommendation to you is I've never had LinkedIn Premium. I don't think you need it. If you get on there and you have a robust enough network, you're using it on a daily basis, you're posting things that are relevant, you're engaging, you will never need the premium account. So I would recommend, don't waste your money on that. But it is a main question that I get from people a lot as far as if they should sign up for premium. Okay, so let's go to building a job search. So I'm a very list-driven person. I thrive off of agendas. I thrive off of to-do lists. I feel accomplished when I check things off. And so if you are that person, then this section is for you. If you are a carpe diem person who likes to seize the day, let me see how this day is going to take me, you might think that I'm over-engineering the process in this section. So just bear with me if you're the seize the day type of person rather than the structure and schedule type of person. Okay, so first and foremost, you want to build out your strategy. Your number one item on your to-do list and your strategy should be creating your resume, editing your resume. Number 2 item should be getting that LinkedIn AllStar status and then using LinkedIn on a regular basis. Number 3 is actually number 1. What do you want to do? And what do you want to do should actually help you define and customize your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and then your job search process. And so when you identify what you want to do and you've got yourself all prepared for it, that's when you want to go out and start utilizing the relevant job boards. So LinkedIn is the main one you should be going on, LinkedIn Jobs. Indeed, Google Alerts, and ZipRecruiter are all other good generic sites that are across all industries. And you can set alerts that go to that unique email address that you have for your job search. The other ones, there's probably 1 million job boards out there for many different industries and multiple job boards per industry. So I actually have, I forgot to send that to Patrick and Liz, but I'm gonna send them to my job board list by industry. SHRM is a great one for HR jobs. eFinancial is a great one. That's EFC on here. That's a great one for financial services roles. DICE is a great one for technology roles. Power to Fly is actually a great return to worker site for people that are looking for flexible jobs, remote jobs, or women returning to work jobs. So many different job boards out there. I think when you think about what you want to do and what's the industry that you want to be in, look for the job boards that are relevant to for that. There's job boards for PR roles, for marketing, for graphic design, for accounting, everything under the sun. The other thing too, when you're thinking about your job search is, we're going to talk about networking in a minute, but you want to think outside the box. So, I have people that will come to me and say, I want to graduate from college and I want to work in investment banking. And very competitive field, right? There's a high demand for it. There's a lot of stereotypes about it. But think outside the box. What is going on right now? And what is the type of company that you want to work for? And does it make sense right now? Do you want to work for a big company? Do you want to work for a small company? If you want to go into a role in event planning, it's going to be very difficult right now, right? Because lots of venues can't host events. So if you're thinking of working for a big company in an event planning role, the demand for that is not there right now. Think about following what's hot right now. Video conferencing, remote opportunities, healthcare, cleaning products, right? And so I know this sounds car manufacturing, real estate, all of these are very big right now because of how coronavirus has changed our lives. So all these companies, right, you might say to yourself, well, healthcare, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, that's not relevant. But every single healthcare organization has a corporate office where people are in finance, social media, marketing, accounting, project management, HR, all those different types of core infrastructure jobs that companies have. And so think outside the box. And maybe this is a good time to explore things that you didn't even think of existed out there. And so I was working with somebody and she's looking at changing industries, and she actually is interviewing for a job in the food and beverage industry because right now there's a strong demand for that. And she was looking for a marketing job, and she's in the interview process for that right now. Okay, networking and interviews. So I'm going to go through this. I've seen some questions coming in, so I'm going to save them for after this section. This is our last section. It is very challenging for me to skim the surface on all these topics. So I'll tell you that right now. I feel like I could go on for hours on some of these. Okay, so networking and interviews. So networking is what I like to call the secret sauce in your job search process. It is not for everybody. Those of us who are introverts, who find small talk really challenging, really struggle with networking. And I hear you, because I'm one of those people. Going to a networking event is torture for me. Going to an event where I don't know anybody there, oh my gosh, even worse, right? So coronavirus, you can't go to networking events. Oh my gosh, amazing, right? But now I got to be on video conferencing all the time. And so some people are really thriving in this environment. Some people are really struggling in this environment. So I think it's great if, you find out what are your strengths and play to those, and what are your challenges or weaknesses, and you work on those. Because if you hate networking, the more you network, the better you're going to get at it, and the easier it's going to get. And the more naturally the conversation is going to come for you. It's going to come more naturally. It's going to be a lot easier to engage in small talk discussions once you kind of practice it more and more. All right, so first and foremost, in networking, you want to identify your network. Who is your network? Well, you've got your friends and family, obviously. You've got any type of school experience that you've had over time, high school, college, grad school, maybe something beyond that, any sort of certificates that you might have received. Anyone that you've worked with in the past, and then your community. Your community is a big one. So you are all a part of a great network with Alliance for Safe Kids. And there's probably many different ways to network with people who are associated with this organization that could be potentially your next stepping stone to a job. So tap into your community as well. I've seen a ton of people within my community. So my community actually just started up a working moms group a couple of months ago. Never had it before. It was started on Facebook, and the amount of information sharing and actually networking that has happened as a result of just this Facebook group that has grown from 10 people to thousands of people in a span of 5 months is invaluable. I mean, there have been so many connections that have been made through this simple, free Facebook group. So tap into your community as well. That's a really important thing that you want to make sure you remember when you're building out your network. So what are some of the reasons why we network? Well, first of all, the right job for you might not be posted or available right now. And so you're not going to be just networking with people where you know that there's jobs available. You're going to be talking to people because in the future something might come open. They've already met you, they already enjoyed the conversation with you and think that you'd make a great contribution to the team. So don't think of it as there's nothing open there right now. What's the point? Reach out and network, because you never know what may open up. It opens up opportunities you never even knew imagined. There are so many companies out there that you don't even know exist, and so many industries that you don't even know exist that are something that you're going to learn about through networking with people. So think of people that you have a common connection with that maybe are doing something or working somewhere that sounds interesting to you, and reach out to them and ask to connect and ask for some time to speak. We network because applying to jobs online is, in fact, the black hole. So I always tell people you can't just apply to a job and think you're going to get a phone call and an interview. You have to do the action. Applying to the job is the easy part. The difficult part and the most important part is after you apply to that job, you go on LinkedIn. I want to work for Johnson & Johnson. Who do I know at Johnson & Johnson? So I Google search Johnson & Johnson. People come, I search on LinkedIn, not Google search. I search on LinkedIn and it comes up with 5 people that I know that work there or have a mutual friend that works there. And then I'm going to reach out to John Smith and say, John, I just applied to this job in project management at Johnson & Johnson. I'm trying to keep the same theme of things that my examples so that I'm not confusing you. So I just applied to this job in project management. And I saw that you know XYZ person who works there. Do you think you can make an introduction? And then I'm furthering myself in the process. I meet with the XYZ person that works at Johnson & Johnson. I applied to this job. I'm really interested in learning more about the opportunity. I would love the chance to talk to you for even just 15 to 30 minutes about your experience there and your thoughts about the culture there. I'm not asking for a favor, but when we're networking, I'm using that and I'm viewing that opportunity as like an interview and a stepping stone for that person to refer me to that job. And then the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? The more you network, the easier it gets. There's a bunch of different ways that you can network, right? So you have your broad networking, anything that you're sharing on LinkedIn, any, let's say, content that you're creating on LinkedIn. That's your broad, any Facebook groups that you might be a part of, LinkedIn groups that you might be a part of that you're engaging in. That's your broad networking. You're going out to a wider audience. And then you have your more specific networking, which is reaching out to your community, the people that you know, asking for more one-on-one sessions, and then cold emails as well. So if you're emailing somebody without knowing them and asking to speak to them, you can do that research on LinkedIn, then that's what cold emailing is. So a lot of times people get very nervous when I suggest that. I don't know about that. I'm just sending somebody an email and they don't even know me. And the thing that I always ask them is, what's the worst that can happen? What do you think the worst that can happen is? You don't hear back, right? Okay, that's not really so bad. You get an email back that says, thanks for your email. I'm not the right person to speak to. Sorry, right? That's the worst that can happen. You're not going to get a phone call and somebody getting all upset. You're not going to get a nasty email response. The worst that can happen is probably you're going to get no response, and that's okay. So send out some of those cold emails, because if you send out 15 of them and you hear back from one, that's amazing. That's really great. You're going to send out a lot of emails and you're probably only going to get back a few responses, but those are the responses that are the most important. Just a couple different networking tips. I'm going to not go through all of these. I think we're going to send you a copy of the slides. So some of this you can take advantage of and just reading through some of the content on here. You want to avoid handwritten letters or showing up in person. So by the time you write the letter, they're going to already make the decision. Whenever you reach out to somebody and ask to speak to them, give them specific dates and times that you're available. So I get an email from somebody and says, hey, Katie, I'm interested in hearing about this opportunity. I'd love for the chance to connect. I look forward to hearing from you. And I see that and I'm like, okay, what's next in my inbox, right? I get an email that says, hi, Katie, I'm interested in speaking to you more about this role. I'm free tomorrow between 12 and 2 and Friday between 2 and 5 p.m. If that time matches this week, that's great. If next week is a better time, I'm happy to send you some time options for next week. I get that email. I look at my calendar. I see that I'm actually available at those times. I send that person a response and say, Friday at 2 p.m. sounds great. Send me a meeting planner, right? So being specific with the date and times you're available. Interviewing, I think the main thing about interviewing is just practice. Practice your elevator pitch. Make sure that you kind of practice some of the core interview questions that people ask. Tell me about yourself. What's your greatest accomplishments? What are your strengths versus weaknesses? Why would we choose you? Why are you interested in this job? And have a way that you can answer the questions, that you elaborate on the response and you're not answering it within 30 seconds. So paint a picture. Have examples for each one of those questions with a story. And when you're sharing that story, you want to make sure that story is 2 to 5 minutes in length. That shows how you've actually answered the question based on whatever the story is that you shared. You want to make sure too that you're following kind of the right cues for the company. So that's why it's important to seek guidance out from the recruiter. So I'm not going to interview for a technology startup company where everybody's wearing t-shirts and jeans and I show up in a complete business suit. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence beforehand about the proper attire and everything. Interviewing during COVID, I think, obviously most people, they're not going for in-person interviews right now unless they're, let's say, at the final stages and that company is at a position where they're actually working in the office. So the best way to prepare for it, make sure you have a dedicated space. Make sure the background is pretty, I'm trying to think of the word. Make sure you don't have like things in the background that are distracting or inappropriate. So I actually, my husband and I are both working from home. I've gotten kicked out of my home office and I'm working on a fold-out table. And I turn, whenever I know that I'm doing a video call, I always turn to face this because I know that there's nothing in the background that's going to be distracting for the people who I'm video conferencing with. You want to make sure that you're dressed appropriately in whatever the appropriate attire is, and practice video conferencing. The couple things that I can recommend is, first of all, if you're distracted by yourself and you're uncomfortable with yourself, you can hide yourself. So most video conferencing profiles, you can actually hide yourself so you're not distracted by whatever, you know, you're seeing about yourself doing. Second of all, you want to look at the camera. So almost this entire time, and in most video conferencing calls that I do, I'm generally not always looking at the people. I'll glance down at them a little bit, but I'm always looking at the camera. And so it's good to do that because it basically shows to the actual person on the other side that you're maintaining eye contact. You want to be a little bit more exaggerated with your facial expressions so that people can tell that, you know, you're smiling at certain times, your eyes are open. So do a little bit of overemphasis on your facial expressions so that you show a little bit of personality. And then do a test run. Make sure everything's up running. Practice with a friend, anything from that perspective. If you do have to go in person, make sure it's safe for you. Ask them what are the proper protocols as it relates to health and safety with coronavirus, but also make sure it's safe to you. So if you're only comfortable wearing a mask, you have every right to wear a mask during the interview. But I think I would request a virtual interview to start before you go in for an interview with a mask, because it is very hard to read facial expressions with masks on. Okay, I'm going to skip over conversations during offer stage. I think the main thing with that is if you do get an offer, you know, asking the specific questions that are important. Are people in the office? What are the safety precautions that your company is doing as it relates to coronavirus? If people are working from home, what is the home office setup and access to technology? What is the expectations for me to have my own equipment? And what type of virtual onboarding is there if you are going to be starting a new job virtually? Okay, so somebody said Zoom offers virtual backgrounds, and that is absolutely the case. You want to make sure that the virtual backgrounds are appropriate. So I do a lot of corrective action training. So I do a lot of complaint investigations on harassment, discrimination, anything of that nature. And then if anyone's ever been accused of inappropriate conduct, sometimes they have to go through a really awkward training session with me. And I actually had a very awkward training session. I don't find them awkward, but to the person, they're probably awkward. I've seen lots of things that I just don't find things awkward anymore. And the person had an inappropriate Zoom background. And my first question is, why are we here? Why did you think that was a good idea? So, okay. So we're at 8 o'clock. So we have a couple minutes for questions. So I see some questions came in. So I'm just going to go through the chat feature and, I'm going to sort by questions. I love this virtual platform, by the way. Okay. Okay, so is there a way to identify companies looking more to remote work? Being an hour from New York City, opportunities have changed. How best to identify the shift to possibly working remotely? Jobs don't necessarily state that, though the reality is most cities in New York, White Plains, aren't returning to the office anytime soon. If you are applying to a job in New York, Westchester, New Jersey, even some parts of Connecticut, the assumption is probably that you're going to be working remotely for an extended period of time. So I would make sure that in 6 to 18 months that you are able to actually commute to the office if the decision is safe to return to work? So that means, are you comfortable with commuting to Brooklyn every day and you live in Yorktown Heights? So be mindful of that, but still go through the interview process, because at the end of the day, a lot of companies are rethinking even their real estate and moving to an environment where people will be 50-50 remote versus in the office or something of that nature. More senior roles, you can probably estimate being in the office a little bit more. Is there a way to identify it though by the company? No company right now is going to say, a definitive answer on remote versus in person, especially in the New York area, because all companies are currently trying to figure it out. On the cover letter, do you have to mention where you saw the posting and the date it was posted? No, you never have to mention that. I've never written a cover letter and said where I saw the posting or the date that it was posted. So don't even have to mention that. You can say, I applied to this job and I'm interested in it. And you're stating the actual job, but you never have to say where you found it. Someone asked, is there a job board for nonprofits? I'll look it up for you right after this. But yes, there is. Do you differentiate between, how do you differentiate between soft skills and hard skills? I usually call it soft skills versus technical skills. So technical skills would be skills that actually relate to the job that you have, that you need to know. So like in an accounting role, technical skills would be like your core, building financial statements, analyzing financial statements, tax reviews and assessments. Those are your technical skills. Your soft skills are, your soft skills would be your, presentation skills, your ability to negotiate and influence people, your ability to build relationships, network with people, all those kind of things that are, less specific to the responsibilities of a job, more broader, that, some people can do really well and other people really struggle with. Okay, some other interesting things that came in through the site before. So what are some of the top industries, fields, hiring in this job market right now? So that kind of goes in alignment with thinking outside the box and, following what's key right now, what's important right now to people. There are so many job opportunities right now in diversity and inclusion because of the whole civil rights movement that we've been going through during this summer. So diversity and inclusion is very top of mind for people right now. Again, healthcare, food, food delivery places. So any of those, my friend works for Blue Apron, and their corporate office, they're just bursting at the seams because they need more people within the corporate office to handle the volume of work that they have. So anything that relates to kind of virtual environments, making things easier for people right now is all what's hot right now. So think about those things. Social justice organizations, their demand for people to help with the volume of requests and initiatives that they have going on is through the roof. So those are hot right now. The other thing too is someone asked, while I'm unemployed, what skills should I be trying to acquire during this time frame? You should be thinking about going onto every type of virtual platform there is out there and getting familiar with the site. Because I work in workshop facilitation, and I can tell you right now, I've worked on probably about 8 to 10 different virtual platforms for one-on-one sessions, webinars, anything of that nature. So those are the key areas that are really important to focus on right now in building out those skills and highlighting those. If you're a subject matter expert in video conferencing tools and virtual platforms, that's huge. Getting familiar with all the communicator sites that companies use now to communicate with each other. Microsoft Teams, Slack, Skype. These are all important vendor sites and tools that you can put on your resume that you have experience working with. Salesforce is another big site. Prezi. I'm just trying to think of broad, skills that you can put on there as software skills that you can utilize. If you realize some things that you need to work on, or things that you want to delve into, look into certification courses. There's a ton of online certification courses for Six Sigma certification, project management, social media marketing, so many different things out there under the sun that could set you apart from other people as far as being a subject matter expert in that area or having additional certifications just outside of your general degree. Okay, so let me see if there's any other questions. Okay, so as somebody asked, as a counselor, I like to prepare my clients to answer the questions you hope they don't ask. Absolutely. You never want to be caught in a situation where you kind of have that deer in headlights. Someone asks you a question, it's a tough question, and you just go blank. Oh my gosh, I have no examples to reference. I'm in a stressful situation and I can't think of how to answer it. So think of those questions that are uncomfortable and that are challenging for you and practice them. Write out your response. I'm a visual person, so it's important for me to write out my response. So if somebody asks me a question and I get a little stressed, I visually see that page where I wrote it down, and it helps me remember how to answer it. So think through those. Everybody has a different challenging question for themselves. What was the biggest struggle that you've overcome? What is your greatest weakness? Why have you been out of work for so many years? Why have you been unemployed for a number of years? So thinking through those difficult questions that you're nervous to be asked and having a good response. Again, everybody's response is going to be unique, so I can't tell you the way you should answer it, right? You don't want to say that your greatest weakness is you're a perfectionist, because that's not being true to yourself or the interviewer. But thinking through those tough questions and asking them and preparing for how you would answer them. All right, so we're about 10 after 8, so I think that concludes our time today. I do have some resources on here that we're going to send out to you afterwards, just about some LinkedIn links, some potential job questions for interviewing. So Indeed has a great list of questions on there to help you prepare for that. And then just some tips on interviewing during COVID. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm going to skip the action plan just because of the sake of time. I usually like to have people kind of think through, one or two things that they're going to work on at the end of a session. But since we went 10 minutes over, I won't put you through that exercise. But connect with me on LinkedIn. I always love to hear from people who've attended any of my workshops. If you have any further questions, you can ask me through LinkedIn, or if you have an interest in delving more into a particular topic, we're going to ask that in our survey after the session. I'm more than happy to have follow-up sessions with Alliance for Safe Kids just on any of the job search topics. So thank you so much for your time tonight. I hope you stay safe and healthy and have a great summer. I'm going to hand it back to Liz, who's going to go through some reminders for you as well.
Great. Katie, I just cannot thank you enough for sharing all of these wonderful resources and your time with us this evening. I know I'm probably speaking for all of the registrants that the information you shared was invaluable, and we really do appreciate your being so gracious with your time. So before we say goodbye to everyone, I want to take a moment just to share some information about an interactive guide that ASK created in collaboration with the town of Yorktown. It's called the Yorktown Together COVID-19 Resource Guide. And the guide offers information on various topics that range from COVID-19 resources at the local, state, and federal levels to finding virtual educational tools, substance abuse support groups, mental health support, and even opportunities for thoughtful service that can be done virtually. And what makes this guide so unique is that we are working with all of the sectors in the community to gather resources for it, and it is updated frequently. So a link to the guide, along with the resources that Katie just provided, and a video recording of the webinar will be emailed to you shortly. The video will also be made available on the Ask website, allianceforsafekids.org. So when I say goodbye, you will be immediately redirected to a quick survey, and I would ask that you take just a few moments to complete it, because your feedback will help us as we move forward in planning future webinars. Again, thank you for your time, and I wish you and your families good health.